This vaccine is liquid gold.
Tonight, Central Ohio and beyond getting a much-needed shot of hope, a shot at defeating COVID-19, and a shot at a post-pandemic world.
You either decide that you're going to be susceptible to getting the virus or you take the vaccination.
The past year has challenged us. Lives and livelihoods have been claimed by the coronavirus. Our children's education has shifted dramatically.
We want nothing more than to be in classrooms with our students.
And we've been tested in ways we've never thought possible.
But there is a light at the end of this tunnel.
Everything went okay. It didn't hurt one bit.
And tonight, we are exploring that future.
We took the vaccine because we want to be those examples in our community.
And answering your questions about this newfound optimism as we grieve the lives we've lost.
How was I lucky enough to get it this early on? Like, why couldn't my grandparent get it a week before me? It would have saved her life.
It gave me life, and I think that's the key.
10 TV's Community Conversation begins now.
The COVID-19 vaccine is here, and it gives us all a shot of hope. But the rollout has been kind of rocky, and we know you have questions about it. Thanks for joining us. I'm Yolanda Harris.
And I'm Andrew Kinsey. Tonight, we are getting you answers. You have access to medical experts standing by right now on a phone bank. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call them. That number on your screen, 614-212-6949. We also have a team of doctors ready to answer your questions from social media live throughout the next hour. Just use the hashtag 10TVVaccine.
Finally, we've created a digital resource for you at 10tv.com/vaccine. So grab your cell phone or your computer. There you will find extra information to enhance your viewing experience. But first, Andrew is going to walk you through where Ohio stands as of tonight.
Yeah, Yolanda, let's take a look at the numbers. They're quite important. Right now, our COVID-19 numbers here in Ohio are back to mid-October levels of cases. As you can see on our 14-day moving average graph, this will really show you the new cases we've seen per day on average over the past 6 months. Take a look here. You can see the steady increase through the end of October into November, then that peak we saw in December before the start of that downward trend. Now we're starting to see a plateau again, right around 2,000 cases per day. All right, let's take a look at another graphic here. It shows you the vaccine numbers, and they play quite an important role here in getting those downward numbers. More than 1.5 million people statewide have received their first dose of either the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines, and just about half of that group have received that second important dose. Now, let's take a look at another graph here. We want to show you how each county is doing here in Central Ohio. Since about 13% of the state has received its first dose, we're using that as a baseline for each county you see here. These lightest color counties are less than 12%. Franklin County, as you see here, on average, seeing between 12 and 14%. Delaware and Muskegum, best counties across the state right now with the vaccine numbers. They are above 14%.
Thanks, Andrew. And our vaccine tracking team has been hard at work getting your vaccine questions answered, and that includes 10 TV's Brittany Bailey. She is in the Digital Broadcast Center tonight with some answers and a little bit about how we got to this day. Brittany?
Well, Yolanda, we're going to be answering your questions throughout the evening, including this question with our medical experts. But first, we're going to get to some questions about the vaccine. It's an extremely lengthy and complicated process to make when it normally takes years. But the folks behind this vaccine did it in months.
We are using other viruses and other vaccines to give us guidance on how to move forward.
Gahanna doctor Leela Javidi told us last year researchers were not starting from scratch. COVID-19 is a coronavirus. Scientists have researched coronaviruses for decades, so they already had data on its shape and life cycle. Dr. Joseph Gastaldo of Ohio Health says there was worldwide collaboration. Researchers shared information with others in ways they hadn't before.
But what Operation Warp Speed did was allow it to happen in a much more efficient basis.
Despite all of that, the finished product is actually pretty simple. Dr. Kimberly Brown, a Tennessee ER physician, says there are really only 4 ingredients.
In the vaccine, there's mRNA, there is fat or lipid, and there's salts and sugar in there.
mRNA is a piece of genetic material. It's not the virus.
The immune system notices that this doesn't look normal. The human body doesn't make a spike protein, and they start attacking it and build an immune response.
Now the priority is getting the shots into arms.
My commitment is that we're going to continue to get this vaccine out just as quickly as it gets into Ohio.
Well, as I mentioned, we'll be tackling several topics throughout the special. For now, we'll send things back to Andrew and Yolanda.
All right. Thank you very much, Brittany.
Well, the coronavirus is disproportionately impacting some racial and ethnic groups.
Some people in those groups are hesitant to get the vaccine because of a lack of trust in science. Our Clay Gordon spoke with Columbus Public Health Commissioner Dr. Mashika Roberts about how this is a community issue.
These disparities didn't happen overnight, and they're not going to go away overnight.
Racial inequalities in Columbus.
We've got health disparities. We've got health challenges, whether it's with mental health, whether it's infant mortality, or whether it's drug addiction.
This was the case before the pandemic.
So it's going to take a lot of commitment. It's going to take some time to reverse some of the impact of those disparities. And we're seeing those disparities highlighted, unfortunately, during this pandemic, where Black and brown people are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19.
Health Commissioner Dr. Mashika Roberts says the pandemic caused setbacks and different challenges.
I think in general, there's hesitancy out there, no matter what your race is, no matter what your gender, no matter what your zip code.
Reluctance receiving the COVID-19 vaccine.
Our job, or my job as a public health official, and clinicians' jobs around the nation are to acknowledge why minorities might be more hesitant, and then to inform them of the process of this vaccine, how it was created, how it was approved with an emergency use authorization by the FDA, and why it's safe and effective for them to get the vaccine.
Dr. Roberts says she saw firsthand that more than 70% of participants in a Columbus clinic were African American. But for those who registered, only 49% listed their race as unknown. She believes it's out of fear of being treated differently, a fear originating from the healthcare industry's dark chapters when there was a lack of transparency.
African Americans have been experimented on without their consent for years, particularly if you go look back to the Tuskegee study.
According to the Centers for Disease Control in 1932, the Public Health Service and the Tuskegee Institute started a study on syphilis in Black men. The study lasted 40 years, even during a time when penicillin was readily available to treat the disease. An advisory panel concluded that the study was ethically unjustified. In 1974, a $10 million settlement was reached. The CDC is currently reviewing that this chronicle of events is accurate and verifiable.
We know as a community, Black people have been affected negatively by the healthcare system. So they're going to have some apprehension. They're going to have some hesitancy.
Restoring confidence in the community.
First of all, we have to be very transparent with the community about what we know about this virus and what we know about the vaccine. We have to be honest with individuals, and we need to use messengers that know the information and that are trusted by the community.
Trust that will take time. I'm Clay Gordon, 10 TV News.
There is much more to come tonight. Right now, you have access to medical experts standing by on a live phone bank. Take a look. They are waiting on your call. Pick up the phone. Give them a call. 614-212-6949. We'll be back with some more from our live experts next.
I'm looking forward to really life going back to normal, going out to pubs, bars with your friends, restaurants with the wife and friends and family, being able to integrate together with the grandparents.
Does the COVID-19 vaccine make people sick with COVID-19? Well, let's verify. The CDC says none of the authorized and recommended vaccines contain the live virus that causes COVID-19. But it is possible to become infected before or just after vaccination. That's because the vaccine hasn't had enough time to provide protection.
Well, Well, here's a look at our COVID-19 phone bank tonight. You have access to medical experts standing by to answer your questions about the COVID-19 vaccines. You can give them a call right now, 614-212-6949.
Well, here in Ohio, much like many other states, the rollout of the vaccine is slow moving. We've heard from many of you who are eligible for the vaccine, but are finding it a bit hard to get an appointment. We now know it's because there's a shortage of doses nationwide.
That's right. And as more doses start to make their way here to Central Ohio each week, Governor Mike DeWine has not yet lifted the pause on who's eligible. As it stands, you are eligible for the vaccine if you are over 65 years old, 65 and older, if you work in education or have a developmental or congenital disease. Now, there's no timeline for when the state might make more groups eligible.
Now, Ohio is developing an online universal portal to make it easier to find vaccine appointments when more groups become eligible. The state says that portal, though, still weeks away from becoming a reality. State health officials also looking into eventually opening up mass vaccination sites to get as many shots in the arms as possible once more doses are available. Frustration over all of this is understandable, but Governor DeWine, well, he's staying optimistic. He says next week the state will receive 310,000 doses. That's twice as many doses than the state has received in the past weeks.
Our pathway out of this, the bridge, two things: continue to wear masks, and at the same time, it's going to be very important for us all to continue to get vaccinations.
If you head to our website right now, 10tv.com, we have a story up where you can find links to Ohio's COVID-19 dashboard, including now there's a search for a vaccine provider if you are in an eligible group. The governor said today that more providers and more locations are being added due to the state receiving so many more doses next week. So that's a bit of a good news. All right now we have Dr. Gastaldo from Ohio Health joining us now to answer some of your questions. And Dr. Gastaldo, thank you so much for joining us. People have a lot of questions about this vaccine. What's been, I guess, if there's one question that you're hearing the most, is there one particular question that people really want to know about?
Yeah, I think people really want to know, is the vaccine safe, which they are. To date, we have given the vaccines to over 46 million Americans. And people want to know, can I get COVID from the vaccine? And clearly, you cannot get COVID from the vaccine. The vaccine does not have a virus in it.
Yeah, okay. Dr. Costello, that's a good point you make there, because many people under the assumption that this vaccine has a live virus and that the symptoms you get from it is because, oh, it has the COVID in it, but that's not the case.
The symptoms or the side effects is an immune response. We call that reactogenicity. When you get injected with an mRNA vaccine, you're teaching your body to make the spike protein, to recognize the spike protein, and you're developing an immune response.
And a lot of people, Dr. Gastaldo, are saying, if I get the vaccine, I've had my 2 doses, and I'm vaccinated, can you get COVID-19? And if you can get it, can you spread it to someone?
That's a great question. So the vaccines are most powerful in preventing people from dying and keeping them out of the hospital. We still need to wait for more information and science on measuring what the vaccines will impact as far as asymptomatic infection and spreading. However, in the medical literature, there are more and more studies coming out that shows that vaccinations will decrease asymptomatic infection and spreading, but we're not there yet.
All right, Dr. Castaldo, we have a question from a viewer tonight. The question here: a person cannot choose which vaccine to receive, for example, Moderna or Pfizer. Is that true?
That is correct. You know, both of those vaccines are interchangeable. We have a Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's going to be reviewed tomorrow. Depending on how that gets worded by the ACIP or the CDC, my hunch is that there's not going to be one vaccine preferred over another.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Some people are wondering, which one should I get? Which one's the best one? So you're saying they're equally as effective.
Best vaccine to get is the one you have access.
All right, that sounds good.
Hey, Dr. Castaldo, some people may be still on the fence about this. Understandably, this is something new. We've never gone through something like this in our times. But some people are wondering, why go through the trouble of getting this shot if it doesn't 100% protect me against COVID?
Well, you know what? these vaccines, like I said before, prevent you from dying, keep you out of the hospital, and it will make COVID more or less be like a cold for people to get. And that's what it's all about, getting back to a normal way of life, something that people could live with.
Now, we've also heard people talking on social media saying, hey, I don't want to get this because I've heard it could cause sterility in women. Is that a fact, or where's that coming from?
So that's coming out of a social media post. There was a scientist somewhere in Europe many months ago that said the spike protein is very similar to a protein in a placenta. That's been refuted. That's pure fiction. There are many women who have recovered from COVID who have become pregnant, and both Pfizer and Moderna have had volunteers receive the vaccine who have become pregnant.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Gastaldo. We are getting our viewers' questions answered, and it's very important right now that people get their questions answered about these vaccines. Yeah. So thank you very much. And it is time right now to check out our COVID-19 phone bank. Medical experts are standing by right now to answer your questions about the vaccines. You can give them a call at 614-212-6949.
I'm hoping that everything can get opened up and everything back to normal again. Want to be able to go out again.
If I have already had COVID-19, do I need to get the vaccine? Let's verify. The CDC says you still need to get a COVID-19 vaccine, even if you've recovered from the virus, because at this time, experts don't know how long someone is naturally immune from getting sick again. Experts also don't know yet how long vaccine immunity lasts.
All right, welcome back. Right now, you have a great opportunity tonight to learn more about the COVID-19 vaccines. We have medical experts on hand to answer your questions. All you have to do is pick up the phone and dial 614-212-6949. It's like having a doctor right there in your own home answering your questions. They are here to help you out and to ease any fears you may have about the vaccines tonight. And we know you're also thinking about your kids when it comes to this shot.
10 TV's Brittany Bailey joined us now with more from a pediatrician from Nationwide Children's Hospital. Brittany?
Well, that's right. Joining me now virtually is Dr. Dale Snyder, Section Chief of Primary Care of Pediatrics from Nationwide Children's Hospital. Dr. Snyder, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I wanted to first talk about children. Of course, lots of parents have questions with children getting back into school, of course. So the first question here will be, when will children 15 and younger be able to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a question that we get frequently as pediatricians. The good news is that there are trials going on right now with children down to the age of 12 years. The process will likely take several months, but what we hope happens is that the vaccine is proven to be safe in these children as well, and effective in preventing them from being ill from COVID-19.
And just a follow-up question on that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If parents are concerned about the safety of the vaccine with their children, what would you say to them about that?
Well, what I would say was that if the vaccine is not safe, it's not going to be approved. And so that's why we have to wait and see if the vaccine is safe in these children, just like it has been in adults. And the only way that this will get approved in younger children is if it's safe.
And speaking of safety, let's go to our next question now. Essentially, it's asking, is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as effective at preventing the spread to others, like my toddler who can't get the vaccine?
Yeah, another really good question. I think to start, I want to have a distinction between spreading to others and if it prevents infection in the person getting the vaccine. So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, just like the others, have been shown to be effective in preventing infection. But what we don't know, but we're hopeful of, is that it also prevents transmission to other people. We just don't know that for sure right now.
And our next question here, is the vaccine only good for 90 days?
That's another question that we aren't sure about right now. We need more time to be able to study what happens after a larger group of people get the vaccine. And so right now we know that it's effective for at least several months, but we don't know how long that immunity will last. And that's because it's different for different vaccines and different viruses. Take, for instance, the flu vaccine, which you have to get every year. The immunity doesn't last as long. But like the measles vaccine is different, where that provides lifelong immunity after you received your 2 doses when you're younger. So we just need more time to know.
A lot of folks, Dr. Snyder, are talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine right now. We know that that is only going to be required a single dose, but what if you get 2 doses of that vaccine?
Well, that's another thing I don't think we know because it wasn't studied in that way. The positive about the vaccine from Johnson & Johnson is it is 1 dose. And so that means that we can vaccinate twice as many people and still prevent the virus from causing illness in those who receive the vaccine. So as with a lot of things COVID, we don't know the exact answers to that yet, but maybe we will in the future.
All right, Dr. Snyder, thank you so much for your time tonight and for answering those questions for us. Now we'll send things back to the studio.
Thank you, Brittany. So much needed information there.
Yeah.
So many unknowns about the virus, so many unknowns about the vaccine. So I'm glad that we have these experts on to get these questions answered. Now, the deadline for schools to get back in person is quickly approaching.
Yeah, but some districts admit, well, they aren't ready. Coming up, the role the vaccine is playing and where some are now opting out.
And if we haven't answered your question yet, you can tweet us at 10TV Vaccine. You can also call this phone bank right now. Speak to someone immediately. 614-212-6949.
I'm looking forward to a brighter future. I think if everybody took the vaccine, that we could get the things rolling again and be back on track by the end of the year.
How can the COVID-19 vaccine be safe if it was rapidly developed and tested? Let's verify. The FDA does say emergency use authorization of the COVID-19 vaccine is based on less data than is required for full approval. However, that data still must show the vaccine is proven safe and effective for 2 months after study participants were fully vaccinated. Emergency approvals are in effect while additional research is ongoing with the goal of full approval by the FDA.
All right, next week, a big week, March 1st, the deadline for Governor Mike DeWine when he said for schools to return to full in-person or hybrid learning in exchange for providing those vaccine doses to districts, giving those to teachers and faculty members.
And over the past month, the state made 91,000 vaccines available to school employees around the state who wanted it. Take a look. This is some video from the Reynoldsburg district. It's one of about a dozen districts we spoke with in Central Ohio who say a majority of their teachers and staff decided to get the vaccine. The superintendent at Danville Local Schools in Knox County told us only 30% of its employees volunteered to get it. He told us being a rural community, there are different mindsets. Overall, though, superintendents have told us that they are working hard to keep everyone safe.
We start to enter a process where we see light at the end of the tunnel. We're all doing our very best to work through a pandemic with a shortage of vaccines.
Coming up after the break, we've already talked about the hesitancy among some in the Black community to get the COVID-19 vaccine, but what about other groups saying no? We'll get into the efforts by the city and county that they're making to combat misinformation. That's next.
A pretty crappy year. It's with a lot of people. So I've had some health problems, and that's the reason why I particularly wanted to get it. And I want to have a life again.
Welcome back tonight. According to the Ohio Department of Health, despite the misinformation from friends, family, or even social media, the truth is that COVID-19 vaccines are safe, effective,
and rigorously tested.
Now in Franklin County, the Public Health Department is seeing some eligible to receive the vaccine withdraw from getting it. But why? Our Clay Gordon spoke with Franklin County Health Commissioner Joe Mazzola about it and what his department is doing to make sure residents have the facts before they miss their chance.
When it's your turn to get the COVID-19 vaccine, will you take it?
The amount of hesitancy that we're seeing, which again is not something that's unique to Franklin County. We're seeing that across the country.
Health Commissioner Joe Mazzola says they are seeing some opting out of their chance to get a vaccine.
The first group to get vaccinated are healthcare workers. We did have a certain percentage of those who were hesitant to get vaccinated in that first round. And that wasn't a surprise for us.
Not a surprise, but a realization that he and his team have more work to do to get more evidence-based information out in the community.
As we've kind of broadened it out now to this next tiering for individuals 65 and older, more the general population that meets that age group, we are seeing, again, a fair amount of vaccine hesitancy.
But the reasoning varies from person to person.
For African Americans, it's certainly, it's because of generational barriers that they've had with respect to accessing healthcare, whether it's that or just, maybe some hesitancy about the process, about the timing of how the vaccine has been developed, all those things.
At any given time, Mazzola says 110 to 120 staff members at Franklin County Public Health are actively responding to COVID-19, ensuring the entire community is treated equally.
And from an equity standpoint, not only in terms of making the vaccine available, in terms of access, we're going to continue to invest resources in terms of engagement and in terms of communication as well.
Right now, demand to get the vaccine far outweighs the current supply.
We know that more vaccine will be coming available here in the next couple of weeks for the state and ultimately for Franklin County.
As vaccine production ramps up, Mazzola expects Franklin County to expand its capabilities.
We're preparing actually as a community to increase our capacity to vaccinate so that when more vaccine does become available, we can vaccinate as many individuals as quickly as possible.
Processing this many people as quickly as possible will take some time. But when it's time,
they'll make the choice to not only protect themselves, but also protect their families and those that they love.
I'm Clay Gordon, 10 TV News.
All right, let's get to a few more of your questions.
Yeah, we know you have plenty of them. We are joined now by Dr. Ian Gonzenhauser. He is the Chief Quality and Patient Safety Officer at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Dr. Ian, thank you so much for your time answering some of these important questions from our viewers tonight.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, we will start with this one. With vaccines being administered and the curve being flattened, why is most of the state still red?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, it's going to take us time to move out of this current sort of crisis situation that we've been in for the past handful of months. We're seeing really phenomenal movement in the right direction, as you mentioned, but there's a washout period that it takes. We need people really continuing with the risk mitigation measures that we've been employing since the beginning of the pandemic. We know that vaccination is really starting to shift that curve and decrease those community incidents. But it's going to take some time until we get back below that kind of critical level of that 100 cases per 100,000 residents. So it does take some time, and we're well on the way, but we just have to stay on course.
All right, Dr. Ian, here's a question from a viewer. I'm 63 years old, but have COPD, which makes me high risk. When am I eligible to get the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, so the eligibility requirements are on a schedule that's dictated by the state and by the Ohio Department of Health. There are some phenomenal resources that really everybody can use to identify when they are eligible and when there's vaccine available for them. There was actually a CDC website that was launched just yesterday, vaccinefinder.org. I would suggest that everybody who has this question logs on, places your zip code in the system. It's going to ask you for some basic information, and it's going to help you find the right location and the right time that you can get your vaccine.
Okay, here's another question, doctor. Do we have to get our COVID vaccine in the same county we live in? Can we go to a neighboring county?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I haven't seen specifics that are broadly accepted that require you to get your vaccination within your county of residence. That's going to vary, to some extent by county and by state to state. But I haven't seen that as a requirement here in Ohio.
All right, another question. Research shows more than 1/3 of adults here in the U.S. have skipped or even delayed necessary medical care. Should adults get the vaccine before making these necessary appointments?
I think this is a two-parter, and I'm going to encourage both sides of this. Yes, adults should be getting their vaccine as soon as they are eligible and it's available. But the study that's being referenced is really concerning. It's probably my biggest concern of all right now, more so even than additional potential waves or peaks. There's been a review of 320 million medical records that showed that colon cancer screening is down 30%. Colon cancer surgery as a result of that screening is down 50%. And the same is true for many other screening tests as well. This is going to cost lives. It's tragic because it's preventable. And vaccination of our high-risk populations is really helping all of those strict safety measures that are in place in our hospitals and clinics. They're safe places. And I would urge everybody who has necessary diagnostic testing not to delay it at all. We're ready, we're safe, we can get you in, call us, make an appointment, get your GI, your ENT, your pulmonary screening. It's necessary and it can save your life.
All right, Dr. Ian Gonzenhauser, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this valuable information. We appreciate it.
All right, we are getting some great questions in our phone bank tonight. We have medical experts standing by answering those questions for you. If you can't use the hashtag can't get to your phone or your computer, you can get to your phone and dial that expert right now, 612-212-6949. They are waiting for your call. They're available until 8 p.m.
Should I get the COVID-19 vaccine if I have an underlying medical condition? Let's verify. The CDC says people with underlying conditions should consult their doctors and consider the vaccine because they are more vulnerable to getting the coronavirus. If you go to our website right now, we have more information for people with underlying conditions.
Do I need to wear a mask or socially distance from people if I've received 2 doses of the vaccine? Let's verify. The CDC says you should wear a mask and socially distance from people even if you have been fully vaccinated. That's because it's unknown at this time if getting the vaccine will protect you from spreading the virus that causes COVID-19 to other people, even if the vaccine does protect you from getting sick.
Local businesses and organizations are publicly pushing to curb COVID-19 transmission across Central Ohio.
The Stop the Spread Coalition is led by the Ohio Business Roundtable, and it's made up of 180 partners ranging from Ohio's largest corporations like Nationwide and learning institutions to small businesses and nonprofits. Everyone, though, has the same mission, providing accurate educational information to employees and their families to keep them safe. Members believe employers have the opportunity to empower workers with facts so they can make personal decisions and communicate those decisions with their family and with their friends. Now, the goal is for this movement to provide an economic upswing.
I just think it's really about educating people about the vaccine moving forward and when we expect it to be available to those who choose to get it. So we want to be part of the solution as we move forward here.
It's a quicker way back to family reunions and just the way things were a year ago that we all want to get back to. The quicker we get community immunity with vaccines, the quicker we will get back to normalcy.
Yeah, that is a push by many tonight. Head over to 10tv.com/vaccine right now if you want to know more about Stop the Spread or how to get your business or organization involved. All right, let's get back to some more of your questions tonight.
And 10 TV's Brittany Bailey joins us now with that. Britt?
Well, we have Dr. Mark Herbert, the infectious disease specialist from Mount Carmel Health System, joining us now. Good evening, Dr. Herbert. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, we've been talking a lot lately about the new variants of the virus and how much more contagious they are. So this person wants to know, how effective are the vaccines against these new variants?
Well, we think that the new vaccines are going to be effective against the variants. We really haven't had enough time to test clinically, but we seem to think that the spike protein that the vaccine is directed against will be similar in the variants.
Lots of folks talking about this next question here. We know right now we're in phase 1B. Everyone wants to know, when are we going to move into the next phase for vaccines?
Well, we'll move into the next phase of vaccines when the Ohio Department of Health and the governor tell us we move. I think we're trying to make sure that we're doing well to get all the people vaccinated who've already been assigned before we move on to the next step.
And then let's take a look at our next question here. Are those not considered essential or in the current age group eligible to reach over the daily vaccine shot? I've heard other states allow this when there are not enough people who show up daily. Essentially those leftover vaccines, so the no waste list. How can you get onto one of those?
Well, each site that gives a vaccine has their own rules about how the extra vaccines are the day. So you would have to contact the site near you and find out what their rules are.
And the next question here, they say you should not get the vaccine if you have COVID. So what steps are being taken if you're asymptomatic, and what are the risks of getting the vaccine if you are positive for COVID?
The major risk to getting the vaccine if you've already had COVID is that the antibodies that are already in your body may decrease the vaccine's strength and power. So the vaccine should be delayed a bit. The recommendations vary from 2 weeks after infection to 3 months after infection.
And then finally here, with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine rolling out now, is that as effective for older Americans as the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine?
Well, the Janssen or Johnson & Johnson vaccine is somewhat less effective against all comers than the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. So we'll have to watch that carefully as that gets rolled out to find out the best populations for that particular vaccine.
Dr. Mark Herbert with Mount Carmel, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We'll send things back to the studio.
Thank you, Brittany. Well, the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center is one of the U.S. sites working on the AstraZeneca trial.
Tracy Townsend of our vaccine tracking team has learned AstraZeneca could request emergency use authorization from the FDA as soon as March.
But now I'm mostly talking about things that I don't know.
Dr. Susan Kolodar is the director of the Division of Infectious Diseases at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center and leading the AstraZeneca study. She thinks the pandemic's frenetic pace is staggering and has changed vaccine development.
It's only been a little bit more than a year, but it seems like a lifetime. Like if you take the emotional component, it seems like forever.
The pharmaceutical company prioritized including diverse populations, Black, Native American, Hispanic, Asian, represented in the U.S. study sites. At OSU, they make up nearly 50% of the trial.
It's really important to get information about whatever intervention on the people that are affected by it.
AstraZeneca's trial underway at OSU uses the virus that causes the common cold, a modified adenovirus with genetic material from the SARS-CoV-2 virus to trigger an immune response. The immune system recognizes the problem and produces antibodies and activates other immune cells to fight off what it thinks is an infection.
Adenovirus vector vaccines tend to have more side effects and not, at least my anecdotal view of this, doesn't seem to be quite as severe as the mRNA vaccines. But, you know, things that you would expect, things that people complain about when they get flu shots, right? Their arm hurts, they feel a little achy, some people feel a little feverish.
The latest data from AstraZeneca shows its COVID-19 vaccine is about 70% effective. And unlike other brands on the market, it doesn't need special refrigeration. When AstraZeneca requests emergency use authorization, it will become the fourth brand to do so. Johnson & Johnson is the third company to apply for emergency use authorization earlier this month. That company is still waiting on a decision from the FDA.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, the vaccine has given us so much hope.
Yeah, but Central Ohio stepped up long before the shot was even available. Still ahead tonight, the moments of inspiration over the past year.
And you still have about 10 minutes left to chime in with our phone bank. Call that number on your screen, 614-212-6949, to get your questions answered.
I want to thank the doctors also for taking your time out, leaving your family also to help everybody that's been going through the corona and the COVID-19.
Does the COVID-19 vaccine cause severe side effects? Let's verify. The Mayo Clinic says some people may experience short-term mild or moderate vaccine reactions. Those could include headache, chills, muscle pain, or fatigue. The Mayo Clinic says those side effects indicate that your immune system is responding to the vaccine. They will go away.
All right, the medical experts who've joined us tonight have truly been on the front lines during this pandemic, but they're not doing it alone.
Right. Local doctors have one another's backs now more than ever. And 10 TV's Stephanie Stanovich reports it's all in order to keep you safe.
3 different people. Dr. Mark Herbert.
I'm an infection specialist with Mount Carmel Medical Group.
Dr. Nora Colburn.
I am an infectious disease physician and the medical director of clinical epidemiology for the Ross Hart Hospital at OSU.
And Dr. Joseph Gastaldo.
Practicing infectious disease doctor. I'm assistant medical director of infectious diseases for Ohio Health.
Coming from different places.
Some people would look at us as competitors. I don't really think we're competitors. I think we all have the same mission. We may work for different bosses,
but are all sitting here together with common goals.
Figuratively, when COVID-19 first came on the scene, not knowing much about it, it's kind of like we were told to go fly this plane. And we all were going through that experience together.
Common goals of supporting each other and saving lives. Through this pandemic, they tell us hospital systems continue to bounce ideas, strategies, and new information off of one another.
It's very common for me to send a phone a friend message to my colleagues in other areas to ask them questions, just to kind of make sure that we were all on the same page with at least my thought process on scenarios related to COVID-19.
So ID is a really small world. I regularly text and email and have phone calls with ID docs all over the state.
Taking a look at the different hospitals and strategies and protocols, how does that help you 3 in your careers and with this whole process figuring out together?
Well, it's very useful, as best as possible. I think one thing I learned this past year is that when you talk to the public, it's really good to have a consistent, a cohesive message.
They all agree on that.
And it needs to be the same, whether you're masking in the hallway, whether you're having visitors that are allowed to come in, even things like testing.
The doctors say collaborations are not only helpful for learning more in the medical world and then educating the community, but it's good for those behind the science and care to have others in similar situations to lean on.
Not only just at OSU, but in the city and in the state. I'm really happy I'm part of this group.
I am too.
In Columbus, Stephanie Stanovich, 10 TV News.
Medical experts have been working really hard to get a handle on this virus and get the vaccine rollout going. And it's been a hard time for a lot of people, but boy, they are the heroes for sure. And we're so glad they joined us.
Indeed, they are. And we want to say thank you for taking time to join us tonight for this hour-long community conversation. But it doesn't end here. I'll be taking your questions on Facebook Live in just a few minutes. We have 5 of our experts joining us for a conversation there.
All right. We'll see you back here at 11. Good night.